3 dumb financial decisions I made in my 20s. Hi, I'm Ed Riggins, but most people just call me Riggo. Welcome back to Thoughts for Thursday. Let me start with a moment of clarity. I could easily make this a multi-part series because there were way more than 3 dumb financial things I did in my 20s. But let's start with number 1. Starting at about the age of 20, and that was to develop a habit of trading cars every few years. I was doing pretty well financially, even though I was still working my way through college. For some reason, I thought that entitled me to trade cars frequently. I put loans on all the cars, which means I was upside down much of the time. That term means I owed more on the car than it was worth. I was asking the question, can I afford the payment? The right question, of course, is what will this purchase do to my wealth? Later in life, it became clear that paying cash for a car was a better idea. In between cars, I made payments to myself into a savings account to accumulate the cash for the purchases. The second dumb thing I did during that same period of time was to not make my estimated quarterly tax payments. That means that all during the year I was spending money that did not belong to me. That means that when tax time rolled around, I had to come up with a big chunk of cash to dig out of the hole I'd created for myself. It's doubly embarrassing now to admit that sometimes I used borrowed money to dig out of that hole. I was not only paying penalties to the IRS, but also interest to the bank. The third dumb thing I did involved the purchase of my first house, and there were actually multiple mistakes here. Instead of saving to make a 20% down payment, my wife at the time and I did a 5% down loan. This meant we needed to take out private mortgage insurance, or PMI, and pay the associated monthly premiums. That decision left no margin for the possibility that the value of the property might go down. Thankfully, I didn't do this in 2006, I did it in 1990. But even the small down payment we did make left us with no remaining cash. So we had no capital budget for remodeling and no reserves for the inevitable broken appliance or leaky roof. There have been many studies showing that this section of the brain that provides executive function, the prefrontal cortex, doesn't even finish developing until our mid to late 20s. Let's just say I would not have shown up as an outlier in any of those studies. So if you're in your 20s now, I would encourage you to remind yourself that the organ that you are using to make life's important decisions is not yet fully cooked. And if you're a parent of someone in their 20s now, I'd encourage you to show a little grace and to reflect back on some of the mistakes you might have made yourself at that time. I'm not a parent myself, but I think this kind of reflection can induce a much needed sense of humility. Thanks for joining me.
Doors closing.